All right, everyone, welcome to the On the Line podcast. First week of tennis season in 2018 has come to an end. I am your host, Noel Alberto, here with my co host, Oliver Dixon Jefford. Oliver, how are you today?
I'm very good. How are you?
Good, good. Late night watching some Sydney action, some Auckland action. A lot of tennis going on with the Australian Open just around the corner as their draw will be done on Thursday, Melbourne time, which will be around Wednesday here in the US and in the UK. So first off, we're gonna do talk about the Brisbane International. So obviously a big tournament with a lot of top players that played. But for the men, it was Nick Kyrgios, an Aussie boy who took home the title over Ryan Harrison, a surprise finalist, 6-4, 6-2. So do you think this is the year we finally begin to see what Kyrgios can really do with his potential?
Well, I mean, it's always hard to tell, especially considering how up and down last year was. Obviously, he spent a lot of last year injured. Not sure if those problems resurfaced. We hope not. But I think potentially he's obviously his first title on home soil. Obviously, he's got a big event, obviously a home major coming up soon. It'll be interesting to see how he does there. But I think potentially maybe top 10 for the first time this year. Maybe a Masters 1000 final or title. Maybe a Slam semi-final. I think he'll go a bit better than he did last season.
Yeah, I mean, it was really concerning to start off the tournament. I believe it was against John Millman when he was playing in his opening round match, and he said he was having problems when with his knees. He said the back of his knee was having sharp pains whenever he straightened out the leg. So obviously, the leg's not straight too often while you're playing because you got to be like knees bent, things like that. But every changeover he got treatment on it, got bandages on it. But clearly, it wasn't a problem after that, winning the title. And then I believe you're right. He did make his first career Masters 1000 final last year in Cincinnati. That
Oh yeah,
definitely it won't be Shanghai. We know he's had problems there, but it could be Canada, could be Cincinnati again, or it could be Indian Wells or Miami. I mean, we know what he was capable of in Miami against Roger Federer in 2017. So it's definitely going to be one of those early hard court ones in the spring or in the summer.
yeah. I think obviously hard court is his strongest. Clay courts don't really suit his game. So I think obviously if he can continue this good form that he's shown in this tournament, if he gets to Indian Wells or Miami, he could potentially be a contender. I think the tours might obviously last year was crazy. Obviously, there's so many people injured, so many surprise results, and obviously Federer and Nadal coming back up. I think towards the latter half of this season, things will be a bit more straightforward, in want of a better term. But it'd be interesting to see how well he can play up till then, and if he can put himself in a much better position than in the past, because he's obviously very talented. He has the potential to be a world number one and win slams. Might be pushing it a bit this year, but we know it happens, so we'd like to see some signs of that.
Yeah,
So
I
I
mean,
think
yeah. Continue,
Indian Wells
continue.
and Miami, Indian Wells and Miami would be interested to see how he fares because they should both suit his game.
Yeah, I mean, also in Miami, he's defending what I believe it's semi-finalist points. So how he deals with trying to defend all those points will be really interesting to see. And it was also nice to see Ryan Harrison make a final. He's he's won a few 250s here and there, but he was supposed to be like that next great American talent. But just like a lot of players nowadays, he's having that like kind of like late surge in the latter part of his career.
Yeah, it's coming more that way. People obviously were used to win slams really young. That's why we were so surprised when Ostapenko won the French Open last year because it just doesn't happen anymore. I mean, Ryan Harrison, if I remember correctly, he had a pretty solid year last year. Obviously, nothing spectacular, but good. Obviously, we know in the doubles he won the French Open title, which was undoubtedly huge for his career and his confidence. But yeah, an encouraging start, and it'll be interesting to see how he goes this year. Obviously, there's some success in American tennis last year, obviously having Jack Sock reach London and obviously win his first Masters 1000 title. So it'll be interesting to see if Jack Sock's success last year spurs on the likes of Ryan Harrison, because obviously they're not that different in age. So we're interested to see if that encourages him to become more confident, and maybe he could pick up a couple more smaller titles and better runs at the Masters and Slams, maybe.
I mean, yeah, the early part of his career, he just had the worst draw in Grand Slams. He would draw like Nadal, Federer, Djokovic, or Murray, all in like everyone in like consecutive Grand Slams in the first round. I mean, that's what's going to happen when you're testing your luck if you're not inside that around top 35 threshold or top 32, depending on injuries and such. But now, I believe he was inside the top 50 to end last season. Encouraging starts to this year for him. He is playing again this week in Auckland, so if he does well there, and he did play well there last year, lost to Jack Sock, I believe it was the semifinals, and that went 3 sets. So he does like this Australian Open swing, so nice run there. Could maybe reach a second week in Australia with a good draw. Really depends.
I mean, there's going to be opportunities for a lot of people in Australia, especially considering, obviously we know that Murray's not going to be there. Nishikori's not going to be there. We don't know how Djokovic is going to play. We don't really know how Nadal is going to play either. And you can say the same for Wawrinka as well, Raonic as well. We're not sure how any of them who are injured are going to play if they have made it fair in time and fit. So there's certainly some openings. There's obviously some other people, but there could be advantages of, Sasha Zverev hasn't really played well at the Slams before, and he's the 4th seed. Dominic Thiem hasn't always done particularly well on hard courts. Cilic is always beatable if he's not at his best. So there's opportunities for a few. And like you said, Harrison has done well the past week. He's done well at Auckland in the past. So he's clearly feels more comfortable on the courts in Asia Pacific. So it'd be interesting to see how he fares for sure. He's due a big run at a Slam.
Yeah, whether or not it happens now or maybe later or this year or later in his career, we'll find out. One more thing I want to mention before we move on to Svitolina's title is Alex de Minaur. He was the Australian Open wildcard playoff winner amongst all the Aussies, and then made the semifinals, nearly was a finalist here. Really took it to Milos Raonic in his opening match. So really encouraging signs for Australian tennis overall, with de Minaur in the semis and then Kyrgios winning the title. But really disappointing signs for Raonic, with de Minaur really like attacking that huge serve of his.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Raonic was another one who struggled so much with his fitness last season, so many injuries. But I still very much expected him to win that match, and watching it, de Minaur was kind of attacking it and pummeling it in a way that Djokovic has done in the past. Djokovic dominates his head-to-head against Raonic. I think he broke Raonic 3 times in that match, which is really surprising. Obviously, not many people knew much about him. Wasn't much expected of him this week, but he lived up to the expectations of getting a wild card. Certainly entertained, and it's a very encouraging performance against Raonic, who has done well in Brisbane in the past. And obviously, he backed that up afterwards. Obviously, reached the semi-final. Could be very proud of his effort this week.
Yeah, and then he's playing once again this week in Sydney with his fellow Australian Open wildcard playoff opponent Alex Bolt in the draw as well. So encouraging signs for Aussie tennis. So we move on to the WTA side in Brisbane, where Elina Svitolina first of all overcame a couple of tough matches early in the draw, down to Konta in the opening set, took the tiebreak in the second. Konta would retire from that match with a hip or groin injury. It was around that area. And then came through against Pliskova, who she had lost to last year, and then rolled Alexandra Sasnovich 6-2, 6-1.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's that's her 10th career title, so very impressive. She's now 10-2 in the finals, so she's clearly very comfortable at that stage. Played very well early on, was comfortable against Carlos Suarez Navarro, who's obviously no pushover, former top 10 player, reached quite a few Grand Slam quarterfinals. Then comfortable again against Anna Conja, who's obviously got a lot of talent. Obviously, the match against Konta was unfortunate. She obviously had worked her way back into it, though, before Konta unfortunately retired. And obviously, a tight match against Pliskova, very up and down. She was 4-love down in the first set before coming back and taking that. And she was 5-2 up in the second set before Pliskova edged back a little. But, she pulled through that. It showed how mentally strong she is, has grown. Obviously, we saw last year at the French Open, she really blew that match against Halep in the quarterfinal. So it shows even in less than a year that her mentality has gotten better and is maybe more capable of winning a slam. And as you said, very comfortable against Sasnovich in the final. And full credit to Sasnovich for making that far, obviously having to win 3 matches and qualifying. And then came from behind 3 or 4 times in the main draw. Dropped the only set, still won. So yeah, in good week for her as well.
Yeah, biggest final of her career. Yeah, so a telling stat of Svitolina from 2017 and then this week in Brisbane is now she's 9-1 versus top 5 players. With her only loss, we know pretty well, is against Simona Halep in that match when she was up 5-1 in a set and 5-1 and up in the breaker as well, and then
had a match point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we know that, and then she's now 13-5 against top 10 players. So that is just astounding stuff for Svitolina. So she plays her best against the best.
Absolutely. I think if you have a look, obviously, there's talk, obviously, I think she's fully capable of winning a slam this year. Obviously, she hasn't been deep in one yet, but she's got a couple of big titles from last year. Obviously, won, I believe, Dubai. She won Rome. She won
Canada.
Rogers Cup.
Yeah, Rogers Cup, yeah.
So she's clearly someone, I mean, maybe not her best on grass, but she's clearly capable. I think, as a season at every slam, including Wimbledon. But it's if you have a look at her losses in the slam last year, obviously there's that loss to Halep, which obviously we've discussed, but there's also
Madison Keys at the US Open.
Madison Keys at the US Open, Ostapenko at Wimbledon, and Pavlyuchenkova at in the Australian Open 3rd round. Obviously, all those 3 are, good players. Obviously, Keys reached the US Open final. Ostapenko just come off the French Open title. Pavlyuchenkova very solid from 3 titles last year in the end. But obviously none of them are top 10 now, a bit below. And she does seem to struggle in big matches against those types of players more. Obviously, they're all 3 big hitters, which maybe doesn't help. But I think, like a lot of players, if Svitolina is able to make it through to the second week, she might be very difficult to beat after that. It's early on where she's more likely to struggle.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. You mentioned, 3 of those 4 bar Halep are big hitters. So it'll be like hard to see her play against those big hitters, especially if she draws one in the first couple of rounds. Because when you look back at that US Open, she did come back. I believe she was, she lost the first set, won the second, but then Madison clearly overpowered her in that third set. And then with Ostapenko at Wimbledon, I know Ostapenko is a former junior Wimbledon champion, so she kind of controlled more of that game. But you're right, she is a threat to win on all surfaces, even though grass isn't necessarily her best. But she really has that all-court game, and if she survives that first week drama, which there's a lot of, especially in the WTA, she'll definitely be on the top of the list of favorites.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so open. I mean, obviously, a lot of people are saying it's now really open because Serena's not there. I think it was open before that because we wouldn't have known what to expect from Serena. But if you have a look, looking at people out there who've, obviously, she hasn't necessarily got a big slam run, but she's very consistent, won 5 titles last year, more than anyone, 3 of them big titles. So if you look at that, she's one of the more likely contenders to go all the way and do it. Obviously, you have the likes of Halep, Wozniacki as well. Obviously, none of those 3 have won a slam. Muguruza has won slams. But she's certainly, I mean, she's going to be seeded 4th, and so she deserves to be seeded at higher. But I think a lot of people will be picking her to win that title, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if she did. But at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if she fell maybe in the 4th round or the quarters, especially the 4th round or early on. relatively early on in the tournament, because I think it's just a slight risk of her game that sometimes she can get a tiny bit overpowered by someone who hits so hard, like a Keys or an Ostapenko.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll see. I mean, draw comes out like we said on Thursday, Melbourne time. So it's going to be fun to see where Svitolina is drawn. Okay, so now we move on to some other tournaments. So we had the Hopman Cup. Switzerland defeated Germany in the mix to claim the title. Federer's first title in, where is it? Perth, since he won it with Hingis way long ago when Federer had super long hair and all that fun stuff. But two of the players we talked about in the last podcast that were players to watch out for, David Goffin for me and you, Angelique Kerber, were the only two players to win every one of their matches without dropping a set. Really encouraging for you and Kerber, really encouraging signs for her so far in 2018.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously there's a lot of impressive people during that tournament. You mentioned Goffin. Obviously, I know Bencic lost to Kerber in the final, but a good week for her. Obviously, Federer didn't struggle too much until he dropped the first set against Zverev. But for me, there's no doubt that Kerber was the most impressive player throughout that week. Had a relatively tough first match against Elise Mertens, who's someone who could be primed for a big season. Won that, I think, 7-6, 7-6.
Yeah.
But, after that was very comfortable, comfortable winning the final against Bencic, who's someone she's lost 3 WTA meetings to in the past without winning a set. Very comfortable against Eugenia Bouchard and Andrea Gavrilova as well in the group stage. Just looking much more confident, much more calm, looking a lot more sharp and more willing to be aggressive and less passive than she was in 2017. So undoubtedly very encouraging.
Do you think it's because last year she had the burden of defending all those points, 2 slam titles, another slam final at Wimbledon? You think it was the burden of all that was like really, that probably took a mental toll on her, and then now that all of that is gone, she could focus to being back how she was playing in 2016?
I think it's hard to tell. I think pressure is a likely factor into it, but I'm sure she could tell after the first few tournaments that something wasn't right. And I think she just continued trying to play the way she was, and it wasn't working. And I think it was an eventual downhill slope. So we don't really know. But as she said this week, last season is in the past. Obviously, she now has to focus on trying to have a good 2018, and she needs it because her ranking is outside the top 20. She's going to be facing someone higher than her, potentially in the third round of the Australian Open, assuming she gets there and the seed gets there as well. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I think she looks like there's a bit of weight off her. I mean, I know Hopman Cup is only an exhibition, but the players take it relatively seriously, especially in the singles. So she does look a bit more under control this season, I'd say.
Yeah, mixed does all the fun and games, especially with that fast 4 format. But yeah, the singles is take it pretty seriously. I mean, you had such a high quality field there: Federer, Zverev, Goffin, Kakanakis, Hachinov, just Sajida, just to name a few for the guys. Jack Sock for the men, and then for the women, you had like Mertens, Kerber, Bencic, Gavrilova, Coco Vandeweghe. So very, very Naomi Osaka, a very high quality field, despite it being an exhibition. And then so Kerber looks a lot better than she did already last year, which you said. But I think for Goffin, it's really encouraging to see that he's backing up what he did to end last season after the title in Tokyo, and then the title. I believe he won a title before Tokyo too. Forgot where that was.
Shenzhen, yeah, back.
Yeah, Shenzhen, Tokyo, and then making the final of the O2. So very, very encouraging for him, and he's done well in Australia before, at the Australian Open before. So he could be primed for something like maybe a semifinal, because like you said, there will be chances.
Yeah, he's a real danger heading in. I mean, you could potentially argue maybe he's even third favourite because he comes in with good form. Obviously, we know Nadal and Federer The top two, Federer's probably the favourite. Nadal hasn't played, but he's still surely got to be the second favourite of world number one. But after that, it's a bit open. Obviously, Dimitrov made the semi-finals in Brisbane, but he didn't always look great. He had to save a couple of match points against John Millman, had a tough match against Carl Edmund, obviously lost to Kyrgios. Obviously, it's only one tournament, but wasn't playing like he was at the O2. While Goffin looked incredibly good, probably the best male player at the Hopman Cup. So, yeah, it's going to be a big opportunity. Obviously, quarter-final last year there. So, it would be interesting to see. I think he's going to be seated around 7th, so he's not going to be facing anyone till the quarterfinals. And considering, he beat Nadal Federer at the O2, even if he comes up against one of them at that stage, you'd have to give him a shout at beating them.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Yeah, Hopman Cup was definitely fun this year. You even got to see Pat Cash come in to replace Jack Sock, so that's definitely something fun about the Hopman Cup. All right, so Shenzhen, that was an interesting situation. So the final was rained outside, so they moved the finals inside where there was no television cameras or electronic line calling. So it was. I want to give much credit to the Shenzhen Open WTA Twitter account for live tweeting the final to allow everyone know what was going on. But it was a topsy-turvy final with Halep winning 6-1, 2-6, 6-0 over Katerina Siniakova, and then she does the double also over Siniakova by winning the double. So good start for world number one, Simona Halep.
A very good start. I think she came under a lot of criticism last season for ending the year world number one with just one title. So I think to get a title first week of the season, hold on to a world number one spot, which was obviously a risk of losing this week. So I think that's a big thing. It didn't play well in Shenzhen last year, and that showed at the Australian Open she lost first round. She's actually lost first round of the Australian in the past 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a bit of pressure going in there in terms of performing well, in terms of being world number one. But, a very solid week. Wasn't always easy, but she made it through. Obviously, bageled in the final set, in that final, obviously. So it was comfortable with that. So, yeah, it's good, obviously, for doubles. Will give her confidence as well. Obviously, she was playing the doubles with Irina Camelia Begu, and that's who she's beat in the semi-final. So good week for her as well. Obviously, semi-final of a doubles title. But yeah, I think Halep is quite encouraging. A lot of the people we were talking about in terms of potential Australian Open contenders or big names that have done okay this week, a couple of exceptions. But obviously, world number one off to a great start.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was definitely also encouraging signs for Siniakova, who hasn't really done the best in the singles over the last year, but encouraging for her to be making a final, including an upset win over Maria Sharapova, 3 sets in that semifinal.
Yes, Siniakova had another great week. Obviously, reaching the final again is never easy, and she was 6th seed, so she was at risk of losing in the quarters. I know, obviously, it helped that Ostapenko fell, but obviously a big win over Sharapova in the semi-finals in 3 sets. Sharapova had played well up to then as well. Couple of nice wins. Obviously, a tough win over Alison Risk, but Alison Risk herself has made 2 finals in Shenzhen, so it's understandable. So to beat someone who's got so much experience, so many titles in the semi-finals is such a tough win. Obviously, you couldn't do in the final, but I still think a good week for her.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, she's more of a doubles player, so to do double duty, make 2 finals, very good. And then name you mentioned, Yelena Ostapenko, so loses to Kristina Pliskova in her opening match in Shenzhen, and then was watching it earlier this morning, goes out in classic Ostapenko fashion in Sydney in her opening match to Ekaterina Makarova. I mean, early on in that match, she was double faulted twice on 2 foot faults, and then obviously, despite being a French Open champion, she still has that, that attitude in her, that spunk in her. She's like, knee foot fault, but yeah, it's not looking very good for Ostapenko so far.
It's incredibly hard to tell with her because she is so up and down. Obviously, she obviously won the French Open title last year. They did well at Wimbledon. Then during the US summer, didn't do so well. Obviously, third round at US Open, kind of bombed out against Kasatkina. But then she did well again over in the Asian swing. Semi-final in Wuhan, semi-final in Beijing. So obviously, there's a little doubt heading into the Australian Open, but I don't think too much can be read into those losses. Obviously, Kristina Pliskova, if she's on, she plays very well. Obviously, a big hitter. Makarova in the past, obviously, double Grand Slam semi-finalist, obviously, Grand Slam champion in doubles, Olympic gold medalist in doubles, so a former top 10 player.
Yeah, she usually does well in Australia too, so.
Yeah, but Australia is somewhere she does thrive. So, obviously, Ostapenko should have won these matches, but I don't think you can necessarily automatically expect her to bomb out in the first round in Melbourne.
Oh, no, definitely not.
She's certainly a big match player, so she's likely to at least win a couple matches there. It's really hard to tell what's going to go on with her, to be honest.
Yeah, watch her just crash out in these first two rounds of these first two tournaments and then go semifinals of Australia because that's just what Ostapenko does, just shows up for these big tournaments.
I mean, with her, there's always people going there probably thinking there's always an opportunity that she could be having a bad day. And so maybe I can beat her, but at the same time, if she's on, no one's going to beat her.
Yeah.
She's playing like she did if she plays like she did from a breakdown in the second set and breakdown in the third set in the French Open final, you're not going to really beat her unless you're one of the top players, like you're like a Serena on form. So, yeah, it's always hard to tell. People will often get a slight opportunity, but I still think she's going to have a decent year. She might not win a slam. Don't think she will win a slam, but I still don't think too much can be read into these two losses.
Mm-hmm. And now we finish off the WTA with Auckland, where Julia Goerges continues a hot streak, very, very hot streak. Third straight WTA title going from Moscow to Zhuhai, now to Auckland. And so third straight tournament win, 14 straight victories, defeats Caroline Wozniacki 6-4, 7-6. And then she'll move to a career high of 12 once their new rankings come out Monday. Excellent performance from Julia Goerges.
She's another one, a bit like Goffin, who ended the season so strongly and has come back at the beginning of the new season, has picked up right where she left off. I believe it's 14 matches in a row now she's won.
Yep, 14, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously some big wins. Obviously, Auckland was incredibly challenging this week. A couple of days completely rained off. So they had to play, I think, a couple matches on Saturday.
Yeah, double duty on the Saturday in New Zealand.
Semis. And as obviously we know, Wozniacki was in great form last year, so she's really not an easy opponent. So Goerges has done incredibly well, and for someone who hadn't won a title since 2011, 3 in a row is some going. She's certainly in the form of her life. Another real danger in Melbourne. It won't be facing one of the top 4 seeds until the quarterfinals in the draw, if she's able to get that far. So yeah, very good week, very impressive once again.
Yeah, and she's never made it past the 4th round of any Grand Slam, but you would think with how she's playing right now, this is her best shot to reach her first career quarterfinal. And
absolutely. Oh, sorry.
I'm looking at it. Her best is 3 4th rounds at the Australian Open. So the Australian is her best Grand Slam.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's playing. She's probably capable of beating most players on the tour, probably all players on the tour. But if she's able to get a good draw and there's a couple of early losses for big names around her, there's no reason why she can't make a maiden Grand Slam quarterfinal. Potentially further, she is one of the informed players on tour. So I would be very surprised if she has an early loss.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching the highlights of the match since I was writing about the match, and it'd be just basic rally, just her and Wozniacki just trading ground strokes, and then all of a sudden she'd hit one brilliant shot, a backhand down the line or something cross court to just set up a winner, and that's what you saw. It was Goerges just overpowering Wozniacki. I mean, she broke her in the first game of each set, so she was the one setting the tone throughout this match.
Well, yeah, obviously, we know Wozniacki is a great player, but sometimes she can have the match taken away from her. And I think to beat someone who's so solid like Wozniacki, you need to take the match away from her. Goerges has a very good head-to-head. I think it's like 6-4 or something. So obviously she's able to do that. She has out of there and won the match. So it's full credit to her.
Yeah, I mean, even though Wozniacki did lose the final, and then people will mention, oh, she struggled in finals all of 2017 as well, despite winning Singapore, ending the year so high, all that. But she'll be seeded second in Australia. And what do you think of her chances headed into Melbourne?
I mean, obviously, a lot of people will talk about how she's struggling in finals. To get to the final in the first week of the season is a good thing, no matter who you are, because it shows you're on the ball early. Obviously, she would have liked to have won that final. She could have won that final, but it's just not the way it went. It's still an encouraging week for her. I think she is in with a shot in the Australian Open. I think the courts aren't necessarily always her style, so she will need to be able to defend extremely well, be able to cope with lots of pressure. She will need to be able to be very aggressive, which is like her, and also you say the same with Kerber, at their best when they're willing to turn defense into attack and attack early. So I think she's in with a shot. I worry about her if she does face someone like a Pliskova or Muguruza, and people she has, especially Pliskova, has beaten in the past, but the courts maybe a little bit too speedy in Melbourne for her. But she can win the title. I wouldn't be surprised if she does.
Yeah.
But then I probably wouldn't be surprised if anyone won it, to be fair, because it's very open.
Yeah, too open. So yeah, that's the end of our the WTA tournaments from last week. But it was for the two other ATP tournaments away from Australia. It was double delight for the Frenchmen, as in Poon, Gilles Simon comes through with a straight sets victory over Kevin Anderson 7-6, 6-2, his first title in 3 years. And then in Doha, wildcard get Gael Monfils, perfect comeback after his long injury layoff, really taking it to youngster Andrei Rublev 6-2, 6-3. So we're going to start in Poon, where Simon looked classic Simon, really neutralizing the Kevin Anderson big hitting, and his defending really put Anderson off at times, as there were a lot of shots that Anderson could have put away, but Simon was running to them. Anderson saw it, would hit the air.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that result. I thought, obviously, we know Simon had a very poor 2017, falling down, I believe, to world number 89.
Yeah, 89.
Yeah. So, obviously, but he'd obviously had an encouraging week, but at the same time, Anderson, obviously, US Open finalist last year, obviously didn't end the season well after that, but looked sharp in Abu Dhabi in the exhibition tournament, won that there, beat Dominic Thiem, beat Roberto Batista, both solid players, especially Thiem. So I thought he was take that final with not like dominate, but with some ease. But Simon really went out there and punished him, made Anderson very uncomfortable. Maybe I think Simon is a much better mover, and I think maybe he exploited that at the end of the day. So I think very encouraging for him. Obviously, his rankings got up inside the top 60.
Yeah, 57. So, went up 32 spots.
So yeah, after a really dire 2017, it's very encouraging early on. Obviously, there's still a long way to go. But I think this might give him some confidence, and potentially top 30 again by the end of the season is realistic.
Yeah, and then he got a special exemption to play. I believe it's in Sydney this week. So, and then we know what he's capable of. I mean, I believe it was in the 4th round of the Australian Open where he forced Novak Djokovic to 5 sets and made him hit 100 unforced. So he's capable, because after the Australian Open, it's that like split season where it's like European, like Middle East swing, and then part of it's in South America as well. And he usually does well in those indoor events because some of them are contested in his home country of France. So very, very good signs for Simon after a lot of poor losses last year, some injuries. So nice to see him back on the winners. the winner's circle for first title in 3 years for him. And then Doha, Monfils. So very good final. Really took it to Andrei Rublev, who worked his way to get to the final, saving match point against Guido Pea, not really a hard court player. So Monfils, perfect start to back to tennis after his injury problems last year.
Yeah, he was another one that struggled greatly in a different way to Simon. Obviously, hasn't played since the US Open, heading into Doha. Maybe benefited slightly from getting a walkover in his semi-final, but then at the same time, if he's playing well, you still would have given him a chance against Team, especially because the Team hasn't always looked comfortable and hard, though had looked good that week. So it's kind of a shame that he was forced out. But yeah, very good week. Really made Rublev struggle in that final. Rublev's not look comfortable at all. So it's crazy to think it's only his 7th ATP title, but very encouraging week. We all know Gael can play extremely well when he's on. And I don't think no one will want to be drawn against him in the Australian Open. He's unseeded, so he could be a real danger man for one of the big guys.
Oh, definitely. When he's on, he is one of the best players in the world. But you could say that literally about anyone. But the talent that Monfils had, he was a 3-time junior slam champion. And so you know what Monfils is capable of. It's just getting it point in, point out, game in, game out, week in, week out is really the problem with him. But you did mention encouraging signs for Dominic Thiem, and then it was his first semifinal in a hard court event in a year and a half. But leading up to that, even though he did make the semifinals, withdrew due to illness, he always got that crucial break to go up, but then he'd give it right back. So what do you think is it with Thiem's game is the problem on hard courts? Because he has the big, heavy ground strokes and a decent serve, but it's for some reason on hard courts, it's just not. It just doesn't seem to click for him.
Well, I have to say, I think obviously very disappointed way to end. Obviously, had to pull out due to illness, but I think in general, the performances I saw from his were more encouraging. They were more consistent in terms of a hard court, and maybe bodes well for him next year and also this coming season even. But I think it's just he relies too much on his power. He sits back too much. He wants to dictate from the back of the court. He needs to maybe come in a bit more and attack earlier on and maybe force to play a bit more instead of going with the flow. I think that's his problem for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a discussion on this over Twitter with some other tennis tennis tweeters. There you go, tennis tweeters, and they were saying the same thing. Too much of trying to dictate from the back. He overhit there's difference between being a smart aggressive and a dumb aggressive tennis player, and I think he teeters on the borderline of that. Because when someone thinks aggressive, you're like on the baseline, hitting deep ground strokes, and then ready to move inside the court. For Thiem, that's not the case. When he hits that big shot, he's still on the baseline or behind the baseline, which is even more of a problem. He just wants to hit even harder, which is a problem for him.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the main. It's fair. I mean, sometimes he has shown it. We see him do exactly what we're saying he should do in hard courts and clay courts. So I think the thing with him is just making him realize that he has those options, that he doesn't have to just hit the ball harder. I think so. I think it's more of a thing that needs to be like mental, not talent, because we know he's got all the shots. He has a very good forehand. His backhand's not perfect, but it's still workable. So he just needs to able to realize that he has more options than he thinks he has.
Yeah, I'd if he was playing higher caliber opponents, so say we threw him down in Brisbane instead of Doha, those players in Brisbane are more likely to take their chances against Thiem because he gave Tsitsipas in that quarterfinal so many chances back into the match and to take a lead that it's just astounding to see the problems he was having.
I mean, obviously, hard's never going to be his best surface.
No, never.
Obviously, he's obviously playing well on clay. Obviously, back-to-back French Open semi-finals. Maybe final there coming up within the next couple of seasons. But he can get better on hard. He can potentially win big titles on hard. Maybe not consistently, but he can improve a little bit.
Yeah. All right. So before we take a look at our picks from last week, go over them, make our picks for this week. One thing I want to note is some of the injury concerns that happened. So, I mean, Muguruza, she retired due to cramps. So, and she's playing this week at Sydney, given a wild card. So, it seems like she's fine. Konta also playing this week in Sydney, defending champion, but retired due to a hip groin injury. Garcia had a back problem, Caroline Garcia. And then Kyle Edmund with that horrible ankle roll. And he's also playing this week. But, yeah, that was a horrid ankle roll. But Dimitrov, very class of him, hopped up first one over to see if he was okay. But you think, and then in the Hopman Cup, Jack Sock hurt his hip. Bouchard had a injury to her gluteus maximus, so I'm sure she's fine. But like some of the others, Konta, Garcia, Edmund, and Sock, they're all 3 of the 4, I believe, are playing this week. But anything to look into with these injuries already?
It's hard to tell. I mean, I think because it's so close to a slam, a lot of people just do things as a precaution. I'm sure if this was like March or early April time, not much is going on. I'm sure people would be maybe risking playing with these slight injury problems. I think it's just because it's so close. You often always see it, the week coming up to slam or the 2 weeks coming up to slam. Obviously, if you go to look at the grass season, you see it like Eastbourne, there's often a retirement or people pulling out. Same in tournaments like Winston-Salem and New Haven before the US Open. I hope they're just precautions anyway, and I think most of them are.
All right, yeah. I agree with you. I mean, if most of them are playing this week, they should be fine. Like even Edmund, in his interview afterwards, he said it was just an ankle roll, but like how it looked and for how long he was down and for like he was limping pretty badly. It looked pretty bad when it happened against Dimitrov.
It did look bad, and obviously there was understandable concern, but at the same time, I'm sure most people, I know I've done it, you sometimes make a wrong move and it hurts badly, but then half an hour later, it's like it never happened.
Yeah.
So it's just making sure. I mean, unfortunately, he went on to lose that match. I don't think that was the key factor, though. And obviously, it's still an encouraging performance and an encouraging week. So I don't think he should be too concerned. I don't think. Obviously, we can't tell exactly, but I'm sure a lot of it was just precautionary.
Mm-hmm. So now we move on to our look back at our picks from last week. So we're not going to go through all of them, but we're going to talk about some key tournaments which made the difference in our score line. So I ended up with 24 points. So how we do it is we pick the semifinalists. You get 1 point for each semifinalist you pick. You pick the finalist and winner. So 2 points for each, a point each for each finalist, a point for the winner. Correctly picking the winner. A point for if your sleeper pick goes far. Far, it's subjective to our terms. And then early exit, that's pretty simple. You get a point for if that player who's seeded or is expected to do well based on the draw goes out early. But for Oliver, he did much better than me in Doha, where he did have team in to the semifinals, so that's 1 point for him there. He had Andre Rublev as a sleeper pick, made the final, point for him there, and then Pablo Carreño Busta as his early exit. So that's 3 points for him there. My only point came from Stefanos Tsitsipas, who qualified through the tournament, really pushed team in that quarterfinal, so that's my only point there. And then where I made up ground mostly was in Auckland, where we both had Goerges Wozniacki in the final, but I picked up the extra point as, oh no, I lied. We're tied. I did this wrong. Oh, boo.
Oh.
We're actually tied. Boo. Live pod drama. We're tied 23-23. How upsetting. God damn it.
Unacceptable.
I know, sack of all offense. Anyways, uh, I thought I had chosen Goerges to win. Clearly, I cannot read. I did not choose Goerges to win, as I had Goerges as my finalist, as in Wozniacki as the winner, same as Oliver. And so I pick up one extra point over him in Auckland, in Pune, as Lauren Davis was my early exit. She went out early. Radwanska was Oliver's. She did fairly well, but still not Radwanska that we expect, right, Oliver?
Yeah, I mean, she lost to Sasha Vickery, which is a match she would have won at her best quite easily. I think she fell in a straight set, so clearly not at her best yet again.
Mm-hmm. And then, I picked up an extra point over Oliver and Poot. So we are week 1 drama and pod drama, tied 23 all in the points as we look onto week 2. So quick breakdown. So unfortunate for Oliver, his pick to make the Sydney final, the men's Sydney final, has already crashed out. But Oliver, who are your semifinalists for Sydney?
I can't remember.
Okay, I actually have them written down.
I know the one who's already gone out is Victor Troicki.
Yeah.
But I know on the other side, my predicted titleist is the defending champion, Jules Muller, who we haven't seen in a while. He decided after the US Open that he'd end his season so he could be ready for 2018. He wants to keep going as long as possible. So
all right, so I'll tell you your other ones.
I have since I had Troicki beating Donaldson, which is obviously not happening, and Muller defeating Zumhur, and then I had Muller defeating Troicki in the final. So at least I didn't have Troicki winning.
Okay, my semifinalists were just Simon. I believe he backs up his title with a good run. He loses to Alexander Dolgopolov, who also had a good run in Brisbane, losing the Kyrgios. Then I also have Gilles Muller versus Damir Zumhur in the other semifinal with Muller winning. And then my title is Dolgopolov defeating Gilles Muller. And who's your dark horse / sleeper pick?
I've gone for Benoit Paire, who had a good week in Poon. To see how he fares.
I went for the youngster, Alex Bolt. Did want to say Diaminoir, but I feel like that's kind of cheating. He did well in Brisbane already, so want to be out there, choose his opponent from the wildcard playoff final. And then who was your early exit?
Fognini.
Of course. No, I'm kidding. Mine's Misha Zverev. So not the best so far for the German. Okay, and Auckland, your semifinalist picks.
I have Jack Sock beating Roberto Bautista Agut, and I have Juan Martín Del Potro beating Donald Young.
Very nice to see 2 Americans in that. You have more faith in them than I do. I do have 1 American, but it's neither of them, so we'll see who's right. I have Andre Rublev defeating Roberto Bautista Agut, and then I have Juan Martín Del Potro defeating John Isner, and then did you say your final yet?
No, I have Sock defeating Del Potro.
Okay, I have Del Potro beating Rublev. Who is your sleeper pick?
Someone we already mentioned a bit earlier on, Kyle Edmund.
Staying home for your sleeper pick.
Looks like the ankle's not too bad. Played well in Brisbane, so I'm interested to see how he fares this week.
I'm also staying home for my sleeper pick with Ryan Harrison. Like we mentioned earlier this pod, he did well Auckland last year, losing to Sock in 3 in a very, very good match. So very I'm a believer in Harrison. And then we had the same early exit, David Ferrer.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a shame. He is the 7th seed, but it's just at times he looked back in Ferrer form last year, but it's just I think it's the mileage catching up to him, sadly.
I think so, yeah. It's just all that he's worked so hard for years. It's just starting to grind him down a little.
Yeah. All right, Sydney for the women. Who are your semifinalists?
I have Garbina Muguruza beating Ashley Barty, and I have Joe Conter defeating Anastasia Sevastova.
I have Garbina Muguruza defeating Daria Kasakina, and then I have Joe Conta defeating Angelique Kerber. and then your finalist and winner.
I have Joe Conter beating Muguruza.
I have the opposite, so we'll see who's right. We're probably both wrong, like we always say.
Yeah.
Your sleeper pick?
I've gone for Daria Gavrilova.
The Aussie pick. I went for Dasha because unseeded, played pretty well to end last season. So but still unseeded here. So having her in the semifinals, went for her as my sleeper pick. In your early exit.
Sloane Stephens.
Oh yeah, mine. Because I'd written this down when the draw came. Kiki Mladenovic, and she did retire. So, I mean, sweltering day in Sydney. I believe I saw it was record temperatures of, I believe, almost 117 Fahrenheit. Don't know what that is in Celsius, but
it was 47 point something in Celsius. It's the hottest Sydney day since 1939.
Yeah, I was surprised they kept playing. And Kiki retired due to heat sickness, so I don't. Though it was an upset and like another loss to her losing streak, it's just tough to play in 117-degree heat, and it's hotter on the court. I believe it's an extra 20 or 30 degrees on the court, so it's nearing 150.
Yeah, it's like I think like the on-court temperature you're pushing 50 odd degrees.
Yeah,
so incredibly uncomfortable. There's obviously you can debate whether it's safe or not to players to be out there. I don't think it really is.
Yeah,
to be honest. So that's for another time, though.
Yeah, we're not here for real pod drama. We're just here for fun pod drama. Okay. Last but not least, Hobart. My semifinals are Arina Sabalenka and Katerina Siniakova. You did mention that you feel like Sabalenka will be your breakout player of this year, and then my other semifinal is Sorana Cirstea versus Elise Mertens, with my final being Cirstea defeating Sabalenka in the final. Your semifinalist and then finalist and winner.
Very similar to yours. I have Sabalenka defeating Kristina Pliskova, but then I also have a Mertens Cirstea semifinal, but I have Mertens winning that. And then I'm going to have Mertens defeating Sabalenka in the final to defend her title.
Very, very nice. Your sleeper pick. I'm surprised that you didn't throw Sabalenka as your sleeper pick, because although she's unseeded, you want a different route for your sleeper pick.
Yeah, I've gone for Vondrousova.
Yeah.
Obviously had a big year last year, so I'm interested to see how she fares.
Yeah, I cheated. Sabalenka's in my quarter. She's unseeded. Let's just stick her as my sleeper pick. And then I went for Zhang Shui as the early exit, and yours was
Tatiana Maria, 7th seed.
Yeah, very, very good.
She has I think Donna Vekic in the first round, which is a very tough match.
Oh, yikes! Yeah, that's a tough first round. So yes, week 1 of our picks, 23 all. So we will be back sometime midweek, to preview the men's and women's draw. Hopefully we'll get more news on potential withdrawals, because I picked Novak to win. Watch him pull out. Then I'll have to, be different, not stick by my pick of him winning. But yes, so Oliver, where can we find you on Twitter?
At Oliver DJ 1998.
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Not First Noel. You can find the Twitter podcast at On the Line Pod. We will be getting this up shortly, or as soon as we can, within the next couple of days. So thank you for everyone who has joined us, and we will see you all midweek for our Australian Open preview.